Hi guys. So I had some tech issues last night when I was trying to make my second video. So this is the part 2, and I'll be posting this, as you'll see, in Tuesday. So the thing to keep in mind, I went over the modernism charts. I briefly went over Ezra Pound, okay, where it says Week 14 Monday lecture. That is the first part 1 video. Now I want to talk about T.S. Eliot's Prufrock annotations. That's a Google Doc. I mentioned it briefly yesterday. When you open it up, this is what you'll see. Okay, do go under File and make a copy for yourself. I've already completed the first cell. I did this due to the tech issues I experienced yesterday. So everything I would have covered is right here in this cell. So the one thing I want to comment, some of these items I've already discussed in the first video. So I'm going to go start with number 1 and work my way down really quickly. So number 1, Ezra Pound is the poet who jump-started the modernism movement. Okay, he's strictly, his beginning career, you could strictly call him an imagist, or he uses an imagistic style. And his concentration is down to the image and how an individual can interpret that on an individual level. Okay, but he's going for common cultural accepted type images, like the flowers on a wet bough in the poem we went over. The second, number 2, Eliot's Prufrock, the love song of J.F. Prufrock, ironically became the model for modernism. Eliot worked with Pound over approximately roughly 5 years to perfect the love song of J.F. Prufrock. He was constantly drafting and redrafting, and Pound would give him some insight. So Prufrock has become the model for modernism. It's the perfect example of the movement. It sums up almost every one of the elements involved. Having said that, I'm going to jump down to number 10. Prufrock, with quotation marks around the word, Prufrock is a shortened version of the title. So when you're writing a paper, in the intro paragraph, you only have to provide the intro title, provide the full title in the intro once. And that's the love song, J.F. Prufrock. After that, you can refer to it in your criticism as Prufrock. Now, to avoid confusion, always remember quotation marks around the word means the full poem. When you say Prufrock without quotation marks, that means the character. Okay, so just like Hamlet in italics means the full play, Hamlet without italics, without quotation marks, is the character. Okay, so item 3, since we're talking about Hamlet, this play by William Shakespeare is a major influence on Eliot's poem. Hamlet is a major influence on modernism as a whole. Some critics have said that Shakespeare is the inventor of the modern human, the modern concept of individuality, the modern personality. It's an interesting theory. Either way you look at it, Hamlet, the character, okay, is labeled traditionally as a tragic hero. I like to view him as an anti-hero. And it's this duality of the character, being able to fit 2 definitions at the same time effectively, sums up the whole Hamlet experience and how it applies to modernism. We'll get more into that in a few days. I have earlier in the semester gone over anti-hero definition, so in a few days I'll go over tragic hero with you. This is preparing you for the reading of Hamlet itself when we get to that phase. Okay. So the contrasting characteristics of that character and how he operates within his environment in the play is a major influence on modernism. Don't be confused. William Shakespeare did not invent modernism. William Shakespeare is an influencer. He's not an inventor of modernism. Although we do say Shakespeare appeared during the early modern period in literary culture. Okay, so number 4, Eliot is emphasizing the poet's personality is not a part of the work. Now that's worded slightly different so that you pay close attention to the emphasis. Eliot wants to be sure that the poet's personality does not impact your interpretation of the work. The poet's life is not a part of the work. So I'll have a quick example at the end of this discussion. But the I voice is not Eliot. So number 6, the I voice is Prufrock. Okay. When you're criticizing it, you don't look at the life and the past experience of the poet to try to understand the poem in a better fashion. You have to break down the poem, the elements, the imagery, the situations, all the guts of the poem itself, like in a formalist lens, to understand what the poet is saying. Now, because you are basically provided the thoughts of a character, you're falling into the head of the protagonist. Okay, this poem is not logical. It is psychological. As I say down here, you're provided random thoughts, and they're expressed as one is thinking. As Prufrock is sitting in an easy chair by a fireplace, he's just thinking the poem. Okay, that's the easiest way to conceive it. He's just thinking these random thoughts. The poem mirrors his random, erratic connections according to his environment. Okay? Therefore, the poem is psychological. It's not logical. Once you view it through a psychological lens, it's very easy to see what Eliot, the poet, is doing as far as presenting Prufrock's mentality, Prufrock's makeup, his personality. Okay. What Eliot, the poet, wants to do, he's redefining experience. So number 6, I say defines experience, meaning you are learning what it's like to be Prufrock. So that's why, as I said last time, Faulkner in As I Lay Dying, each chapter is a different character's thought process. You're learning what it's like to experience being another person. All the characters. You learn what it's like to be all these characters. Same way here. Eliot is showing you how Prufrock is. You're learning what is Prufrock. So officially, using the correct terminology, when you refer to one's thought process placed down in print, that is stream of consciousness. You may have been provided, well, in fact, we discussed that earlier in the year when we were talking about free writing. Stream of consciousness. Sometimes it's referred to as interior monologue. Stating it as an interior monologue, that echoes closer to the concepts of drama and the dramatic monologue, when an actor comes out on the stage and he's alone on the stage and he's talking to himself, but the audience hears all these thoughts, this rambling nature coming just apparently off the top of his head. Okay, now, as far as number 8 is concerned, these are random thoughts. Each stanza stands by itself. So stanza 1 may present a few images that stanza 2 picks up on. Stanza 2 is going to take these images and go in a whole new direction. They stand alone as far as operating with similar situations. I'll phrase it like that. But as a result, okay, you do not have a to B to C to D mentality as far as plot is concerned. There is no plot. So without plot, there is no time marker. You do not know if these thoughts that are provided to you resulted after years of speculation on Prufrock's attitudes, or if it's just merely 5 minutes. So there's no way to gauge the time involved with these, with this massive outpouring of feeling. Now, these random thoughts are based on multiple illusions. And again, I'll have another slide to show you in a second. It's called intertextuality. So when you're taking something from the past, putting it into the modern work, and then reworking, changing, shifting, transforming the material into something new. So Eliot, the poet, will take aspects of, let's say, Chaucer or Shakespeare or a Greek poet, and merge the wording and the phrasing and the idea into the Prufrock mindset. Prufrock, thinking these thoughts, is showing a different way of understanding for the material. But it's also showing you, the audience, the reading audience, that Prufrock is a high academic. He knows a lot of literature. He knows very much of a wide variety of classical material that is taught in the upper levels of college. Okay, so this is a good start for understanding the motivation, let's say, of modernism and how it applies to the poem. Okay, and most importantly, this section, I wanted you to be aware of the title. You can refer to it as Prufrock. Just don't forget your quotation marks. Okay. Now, later in the week, when I start adding more videos, we'll go through each of these cells. So be sure you're saving a copy of this for your own use. I'm going to close off the annotation. Now, I'm going to open up the notes PDF. In this particular case, a lot of what I just went over with these items 1 through 10, they're addressing the pages here. In particular, I want you to see, after this opens up, I want to show you a Victorian poem. Now, the Victorian period is right before modernism, and the modernists are reacting towards the whole Victorian experience. The English Victorians in particular put categories and classifications on everything. People, in fact, were labeled and put in little boxes of identity, and very few people questioned the identity that they were placed in the little box they were put. It was a very structured, very conservative era. Okay, this poem that's slowly forming on the monitor is by Elizabeth Barrett Browning. She's a Victorian poet. Do not think I disrespect the poem. For what it's worth, it is a very valid, strong, creative work for the Victorian period. Speaking as a modernist, however, it's a little rigid. It's too perfect. It is too precise, and too assuming of other people's cultural values, echo the poet. Okay, so you've heard of the line, "How do I love thee?" Elizabeth Barrett Browning created this sonnet. Okay, and she says, "How do I love thee? Let me count the ways. I love thee to the depth and breadth and height my soul can reach when feeling out of sight for the ends of being and ideal grace. I love thee to the level of every day's most quiet need by sun and candlelight. I love thee freely as men strive for right. I love thee purely as they turn from praise. I love thee with a passion put to use in my old griefs and with my childhood's faith. I love thee with a love I seem to lose with my lost saints. I love thee with the breath, smiles, tears of all my life, and if God chose, I shall but love thee better after death." So again, this is a perfect Italian sonnet. The rhyme scheme is based on Italian sonnet structure. The rhymes are very clearly stated. You hear the rhythm, you hear the pulse, you hear the echoing phonetics. Each line is a perfect iambic pentameter. Sonnets were expected to be on the subject of love, and Elizabeth Barrett Browning pulls no punches. This is about love. Almost every line has the word love in it. Okay. The I voice is Elizabeth Barrett Browning. She is writing a private poem in a public fashion to her fiance, who she will marry, and eventually, and they move to Italy after their wedding, and they live happily ever after. Okay, the expectations are being fulfilled for you through the nature of the poem. The love sonnet celebrates love. That's what Barrett Browning is providing you. Okay, so if you remember what I said about modernism, modernism defies expectations. They'll say it's a love poem, and then they'll twist it into something different. So when you get the chance, come out here to the next page. On the left-hand side, this is the Victorian mindset. On the right-hand side, this is the modernist mindset. And as you can see, you have a lot of polar opposites between the two cultures. The modernist era is very pessimistic, despite being open-minded and free-thinking. Okay, people are afraid of world events, as an example, like a global pandemic or global financial crisis or a war. This is before World War I and World War II. So, ironically, the modernist era is predicting a lot of the developing concepts that will pop up over the decades. The Victorians, on the other hand, are very optimistic despite their conservative nature. They are very narrow-minded. It's hard to move out of the identity that you've been placed. So if you're born a white male butler, your children will be working class servants. You will marry a white woman, and you will live in a house, if you're lucky, or you will live under you'll be a live-in servant with the higher class that you're working for. Okay. Each role in society has a specific expectation, and you followed through with it optimistically. You felt that the society knew what it was doing, that the church is supporting the society, and there's no conflict. Everybody's working towards a common goal. Unfortunately, situations become more ugly as time progresses, and that's the result of World War I has been blamed on all this nationalistic ideals of the Victorian era. Okay, so these other pages I've already discussed with you in those items 1 through 10. The final thing I want to point out, it's on page 6. These are some quick references of the illusions that Eliot the poet puts into the mind of J. Alfred Prufrock. So the first 3 are the major ones that are obvious. You see them, they're labeled. There shouldn't be a problem with them. Okay, but I will discuss how they apply to Prufrock's life. As far as Shakespeare, Eliot will, through intertextuality, takes material from Twelfth Night and merges it with Prufrock's mindset. It's not as highly reconstructing of the theme, so I tend to skip that, mentioning that to the students. However, Hamlet, on the other hand, is a major influence. So as far as Hamlet's concerned, we'll have perhaps a day or half a day discussing how Hamlet is relevant to Prufrock. Okay. And if I have time, I'll address the Andrew Marvell and Hesiod's poem. So this, again, is an example of intertextuality. These allusions are intertextual allusions. Okay, so I apologize for the brief waiting period for seeing part 2. It'll pop up here. I'll say week 14, Tuesday lecture. Okay, and then on Wednesday, I'll have another short video explaining parts of the chart that you're developing for your annotations. Okay. So again, be safe out there. Let me know if you have any problems or situations you need to discuss. Later.